Hey guys, what's up? Alright, so I'm back with another history video. And I know this is today's Sunday, so it is like a couple days before the final. And I'm sorry this is coming out so late, and I know some of you guys have been waiting for me to create these videos. So I'm going to try and do all of that right now, while I have time. Sadly tomorrow, hopefully tomorrow you guys can get this. And you can just watch it throughout all of Memorial Day, and then by the time the history final comes, you'll be ready. Also, I give my condolences in advance to those who have history and chemistry on the same day. God bless you. I'm so sorry that happened to you. If it makes you feel any better, I have math and bio on the same day, so that's gonna be fun. But anyway, alright, so the first video, I'm gonna be releasing 2 more videos, including this one. This one's going to be about World War I and World War II. So I don't know how long this is going to last, but hopefully it's not going to be 2 hours like my first video. But nevertheless, we're going to do it in my second video. Basically, right after I finish this video, I'm going to be starting my next one, which is going to be on Hitler and Vargas. That one's going to be really short, ridiculously short, but whatever, we'll deal with that. So we're going to start with World War I and World War II, and I think this is the most important part, honestly, because this is the part where, especially World War II, this is the part where everything comes into play. And so we're going to see what happens. Okay, so we're going to start with World War I. And I'm going to give you sort of a timeline of what happens, the important dates. So if you want to take notes on this, this is something you might want to know. So in 1914, the event that starts everything, June 28th, 1914, the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie. They were murdered in Sarajevo, which is the capital of Bosnia. And Bosnia, that's kind of right here, basically, in the Balkans. And it's a place of nationalism. And so basically, the Archduke chose the worst day because that day was the day of Serbian nationalism. So the Black Hand, led by Gavrilo Princip, killed the Archduke, and that was that. July 5th, Germany issues a blank check, which is basically a reassurance to Austria-Hungary, saying, "Yeah, do whatever you want. We'll let you. You can do whatever you want. We'll back you up on whatever." Now, Germany doesn't know that Austria-Hungary is taking this for reals. Germany's just saying that so Austria-Hungary doesn't feel like it's alone. But Austria-Hungary's like, "Oh, we get to play dirty now? Alright, let's declare war." But then they first issued ultimatum, which is issued on July 23rd. Now Austria-Hungary issues this impossible list of demands to Serbia. They say, "Serbia, you have to do this, that. You have to let us go into..." And the one that really just that annoys Serbia is they say, the Austro-Hungarians say that they can go into the Serbian government and look into files and look into the investigation of who actually murdered the Archduke and whether the government had any relationship with the Black Hand. And so the Serbians are like, "Nuh-uh, we don't want to do this. We don't want to be part of that." So they reject it. Now, surprisingly, they accept most of the ultimatum, and that was the complete opposite of what the Austro-Hungarians wanted. The Austro-Hungarians wanted to basically make the list so impossible that they would have to declare war on Serbia. That said, Serbia says, "Okay, we can't do this one thing," so Austria-Hungary's like, "Screw it, you're going to war." And on July 28th, Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Because of that, Russia declares war on Austria-Hungary, and on August 1st, Germany declares war on Russia. So this is already getting very complicated. August 3rd, Germany enters Belgium. And then August 4th, Great Britain declares war on Germany because Belgium and Great Britain are chummy buddies. And so because Belgium's being attacked, basically Britain has to get into the war now. Then August 20th, Germany takes Brussels. Brussels, if you don't know, is the capital of Belgium. Come on guys, you need to get this stuff. Alright, so Germany takes Brussels on August 20th. Then, actually, side note, August 22nd, the War Measures Act in Canada is released. I'll get into this more, but basically it limits the rights of aliens and anyone not in favor of the war. That doesn't matter, alright? I'll get into that later. So basically, August 26th, the Battle of Tannenberg. So, okay, before this, Russia was coming here, alright? They were going to come and attack Germany. So Germany was scared of the so-called Russian steamroller. And that scared the crap out of them. And so eventually they win at Tannenberg. The Germans win at Tannenberg. Is the first notable battle led by Erich Ludendorff and Paul von Hindenburg. And so this basically boosts German morale, and now by the end of like the month, Russia is now running away from the Germans. Now they're running away from the German steamroller, if you may. September 6th, this is the first Battle of the Marne, so this is in France. And this is the first battle of trench warfare. So basically, trench warfare, if you can't remember, but I mean, you should remember this. Both sides dig a hole, dig a giant trench, and you shoot each other, and then maybe one side will try and jump up and try and cross no man's land, but they end up getting shot or being dragged down because of the barbed wire. Why did people think this was a good idea? I don't know. It's kind of stupid because you're just you're fighting your heart and life for just a little nudge of land. It's not even that big. It's just like a little nudge. That's it. That's all you get. And then you have to fight another month to get another little nudge. It doesn't make any sense. So that's stupid, honestly. Then on October 28th, the Ottoman Empire joins. So the Ottoman Empire, if you don't know, this is the Ottoman Empire. It's basically Turkey, the Levant. It started way before the war, way before the war. It really started like in the 1400s. That was when it really started picking up speed. But it's really old now. No one really cares about it. It's really called the sick man of Europe. But it's joined the war. It's joined the Central Powers. Just to clarify, the Allied powers are basically Russia, the United States, later Britain, France, and the Central Powers are basically Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, the Ottoman Empire, all those fun countries. Yeah, that's basically the Central Powers. Okay. Now we're going on to 1915. 1915, May 7th, the Lusitania is sunk by German U-boats. Not nice. However, this isn't enough to basically make the Americans immediately join the war. This isn't enough to push them to do anything like that. May 23rd, the Italians joined the Allied powers. Now, this is kind of interesting because before World War I, there were these two groups, alright? You had the Triple Alliance and the Triple Entente. Basically, the Triple Alliance was just basically, it was Germany, it was Italy, really, it was just those two, and then then the Triple Entente, oh, and sorry, in Austria-Hungary, Triple Entente, that is Britain, France, and Russia. Alright? So, now you would think, okay, the Italians are part of the Triple Alliance, so wouldn't they technically join the Central Powers? Well, no. The Italians, they're kind of crafty. They wanted to see which side would provide bigger benefits for them. And so, basically, they got the impression that if they joined the Allied powers, they would have a better chance of getting more land right here. And so they decided to join the Allied powers. So now the Italians are with the Allied. That's great. 1916, February 21st to December 18th. I'll repeat that because I kind of messed that up. February 21st, December 18th is the Battle of Verdun. This is the longest battle. It is the scariest battle, honestly. It was this huge fight in France, and obviously it lasted a long time. It was very traumatic, very bloody. May 31st to June 1st was the Battle of Jutland. This occurred right here near Denmark. It's basically Jutland was the only major naval battle. I would say it was the only naval battle, just to play it safe, where the British blockaded this area. And the Germans tried to go through. Now, okay, everyone has a different opinion about who won the battle. Kaiser Wilhelm II said the Germans won because they sunk more British ships. However, As discussed by most historians, the Germans did not win because they did not break the blockade. So basically the entire purpose of the battle, they did not accomplish that. So therefore, basically the Germans lost the Battle of Jutland. Then July to November, it was the Battle of the Somme, not Somme. So this was okay. So we're done. We're right here. All right. French soldiers are being pushed back by German forces. They're taking a lot of hits. There's so many Germans coming this way. They need something to break the tension. So they say, Britain, go instigate a battle right here at the Somme, and that will take some of the pressure off here. So some soldiers will go and fight here, and then that will relieve the tension in Verdun. And basically, the Battle of Somme, this was another very long and costly battle, but the Allies eventually win. Okay, what else happened? Okay, then we're going to 1917. March 2nd, the Zimmermann telegram is released to the United States. Not the United States. It's released to the public. So, if you don't remember, the Zimmermann telegram was basically... We're not even sure if this really existed or not, but basically the British come to the United States saying, yo, America, we got something, watch your back. Germany's telling Mexico to attack you Germany's telling Mexico to join the war against the United States, that way if the Germans win, they'll help take back some of the United States. Basically, United States, a third of its land previously belonged to Mexico, so that's kind of a sore spot for Mexico. Now, if you know the Mexican Revolution, Carranza, who was in charge at this point, he wanted nothing to do with the war. He did not care about this. He did not want anything to do with it. He wanted to stay away. But the United States couldn't trust that, so they eventually declare war. April 1917 was the Battle of Vimy Ridge. Sorry, I keep saying Vinny, like my cousin Vinny. But Vimy Ridge, that was the first battle, the first major Canadian battle. It's a battle that really defines Canadian pride. It's basically, so before, the British officers controlled Canadian armies. And this time, Canadian armies are kind of fighting on their own. And they kind of have this joy of going, yes, we are Canadians, we're winning, that's awesome. Take that, you stupid Britons, alright? Come on, let us have some independence a little bit. So this kind of this fuels Canadian pride, and there's a follow up at the Battle of Passchendaele. Then what else happened? All right, July 2nd, the East St. Louis riots occur. Basically, 6,000 blacks were killed for stealing jobs. This was a notorious, horrible massacre upon the blacks. And it just shows that while America is technically fighting for democracy, it's not really the case in the United States itself. I mean, after all, even the armies are segregated. Everything is segregated. There's racism. It's horrible. It's not nice. Okay, and then in November we have the Camp Logan riots, where it's kind of the opposite a little bit, where black soldiers revolt against the army and start patrolling Houston. And this is eventually put down. December 6, 1917, the Halifax explosion. Basically, giant kaboom in Halifax, Canada. This is detrimental to Canada, to Halifax. A lot of the supplies are destroyed. This isn't good. 1918. So in August, we have the Battle of Amiens. This is the last major battle for the Germans. Basically, it's a last stand for Germany. The Germans lose. I forgot to mention, in 1917, Russia backs out of the war because the soldiers are tired. They don't want to be in the war. They hate the war effort, and they eventually revolt against the Tsar. And eventually, you have a communist government. So that's not good. So eventually, okay, and then the last thing I have to say in the timeline, November 11th, 1918, World War I officially ends on the 11th minute of the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. Wow, that's a lot of 11s. But why would you plan it like on that day? Like that's just a weird pattern. Now, anyway, so that's World War I in a nutshell. Now, if you know Mr. Page does not go for the nutshells. No, he goes for the almonds. He goes for the nut itself. All right. So basically, next I'm gonna talk about the causes. So some of the causes. So we have nationalism. So nationalism is excessive pride for one's country. It's like your willingness to die for your country. And at this time, you know, we're getting a lot of nationalism. We have the British, the Germans, the Austro-Hungarians, especially the Serbians, because the Serbians right now they want to form a giant Yugoslavian nation, and Austria-Hungary is not in support of that, and so Serbia is kind of upset about that, and so they're feeling this nationalist pride of who they are. They're being Serbians. They're not those weird Balkan nations. No, they are Serbians. They don't want to have anything to do with Austria-Hungary. They hate Austria-Hungary. So that's what happens. Imperialism. If you know if you have ever played Risk, which I tried playing, but I always just make up the rules as I go along, honestly. But basically, it's an imperialistic game. It's a game of conquering other territories. And so colonization is really popular now. I mean, after all, a bunch of European colonies are formed in Africa. I didn't draw Africa here. By the way, this is my map of Europe. I tried doing stuff. Okay, Great Britain works. This is kind of awkward, but okay, I got North Africa at least. But anyway, back to the subject. So basically, colonization. Colonization occurs so you can get more supplies. And this is definitely a world war, because when the war is declared, all these nations and their colonies is the key point, their colonies get involved. So basically, it's kind of like a competition of who has more colonies. If you have more colonies, you have more wealth. If you have more wealth, you have more to brag about. And if you have more to brag about, you're more dominant, and no one wants to be dominated. Everyone wants to dominate. Okay, and then some short-term changes or causes. Okay, so we have the first and second Moroccan crises. Now, as much as I love history, this part I don't know too well, so I'm just going to read my definition from the script. Alright, first Moroccan crisis. In 1905, Germany tries to seize Morocco, claiming to be protecting the Moroccans from being oppressed by the French. Okay, so the Germans seem good at this point. The resulting Algeciras Convention awards France the ability to control Moroccan affairs, but it guarantees equal trade for everyone, including Germany, and so all seems dandy. So Germany's like, hey, France, get out of here, alright? You have no reason to be invading Morocco. And to be honest, Germany just probably wanted to invade Morocco first, but France kind of did it before them. So then the second Moroccan crisis occurs in 1911, where France invades Morocco to defend the Sultan from intruders. However, this is infringed on the Algeciras Convention, so Germany tries to stop it again. This doesn't end up too well. So already we're seeing this sort of this rivalry between Germany and France, and this isn't good. Germany and France have been basically stealing each other's land. Germany's been taking Alsace and Lorraine, and Strasbourg. Okay, I'm sorry. It's like late at night, so I can't speak right now. Strasbourg. I don't know. I don't have a French accent. Get Sebastian to say it. So basically, Germany is taking all this land, and France doesn't really like this too much. So, and they're like, I mean, the border's right here. Like, they're bound to kill each other. All right. So that's not good. Militarism and industrialization; these two go hand in hand. So right now, this is past the Industrial Revolution. So things are now being produced on a mass scale, and now guns are being they're being tweaked and perfected, and basically all weapons are being improved. New stuff is being invented. It's crazy. All these new machines are being created. It's basically people view industrialization and militarization as a key to over-dominate others, and so this is why people are starting to build up their navies, their armies, their air forces. Well, air force is not that much because no one really trusted flight back then. More in World War II. World War II, they get more comfy with airplanes. Okay. Then obviously the assassination is a major player in this. The ultimatum is also a major player. The blank check. And the last thing, alliances. So basically alliances. So if you don't know alliances, I kind of feel bad for you, honestly. But if alliances basically, okay, we chum buddies. I become your friend, and if you go to war, I'll fight on your side, and if I go to war, you fight on my side. Now, because people want to secure their safety, they make a bunch of alliances. So this is crazy because just a little skirmish between Austria, Hungary, and Serbia, two insignificant countries, honestly, get Germany, Russia, Britain, France, and their colonies all involved in this giant world war. And so it's crazy. So alliances definitely have a role in this. Another side point, I want to mention this because Germany kind of has a little obsession. Kaiser Wilhelm II claims that Germany needs to have its place in the sun. So Germany is kind of like, it's rising. It's recently been united by Otto von Bismarck, and basically it's getting more credibility. It's no longer Prussia necessarily. It's now Germany, and so now it's trying to out-dominate Britain. So Germany is Germany's like, okay, Britain, thank you for being an awesome empire for the past 200 years, honestly, but now it's Germany's time. Let Germany rise and let us have our place in the sun. So you may say. Some things you might want to know. All right, I put this under a miscellaneous category. I should have organized it, but whatever. If you need to, you can pause the video and just jot these down. So first of all, these have no particular relevance to each other consecutively. So barbed wire. So barbed wire was huge back then because basically what it was used for is if you're running and you're charging across the trench, basically this is like, it's like, yeah, it just cuts you. You stop, you're like, ow, that hurts, and then your enemy just shoots you dead, alright? It stops you. This was so effective that if you watched my Mexican Revolution video, the one I made like a week ago, basically, Obregón used this against Pancho Villa. Pancho Villa, the guy who everyone feared for his famous cavalry charges, was stopped by barbed wire. So this shows how desperate and how like genius everyone is, just trying to push everyone back and try and like go through this giant melee of using barbed wire. Barbed wire, I mean, as much as I hate it, it's kind of genius. All right, Plan 17. I'm pretty sure you don't remember this because neither did I when I made this. Plan 17 was the French plan to defeat Germany before they mobilized. It failed because the Germans kind of defeated them before they could ever start. I'll talk more about the German offensive later. Actually, I'm going to talk about it right now since, it's the next thing on the list. So the Schlieffen Plan. So Germany is right here, alright? I'm going to try to draw the border right here. Alright, good enough. Alright, so Russia's coming this way, and France is coming this way. Now, one thing you never want to be is that you don't want to be in the middle. But trust me, I'm a middle child. I have my older brother and younger brother attacking me at the same time. Not fun. So you're in the middle. So Germany is like, alright, we don't want to do this. This sucks. We need to find a way out of this. So the Schlieffen Plan was, alright, the Russians, they're going to take a long time to mobilize, alright? They're not going to mobilize too quickly. They're going to be too slow. So first we're going to go just march through France, or first go to Belgium, then march into France, take over Paris, and then we'll have enough time, enough supplies, enough men to go all the way back and fight Russia, and we don't have to fight a two-front war. That is the Schlieffen Plan. And so because of this, they have to be quick. They have to be able to take down France in an instant. And that's why France was never really able to initiate Plan 17, because the German offensive was so quick that they didn't even have time to put Plan 17 into motion. I already talked about trenches. Okay, dreadnoughts. Dreadnoughts was so the HMS Dreadnought was the first dreadnought. That's how we get the term. It was a British ship. It was the biggest ship ever. It was just amazing. Had so many guns. It was sort of armor-proof. It was just a revolutionary ship at the time, and so all of a sudden everyone starts making their own ships. This is basically how people are starting to build up their navies a little bit. Unfortunately, these cost a lot of money, so you don't want to use them. That's why there were never really major naval battles, because no one wanted to risk getting their ships destroyed, except one time at Jutland, and then after that they just didn't want to move them at all. Then U-boats. The U-boats. So submarines, alright? First of all, submarines, I mean, I love them. I love the yellow submarine, alright? That's my favorite submarine. But it's just tricky. It's just mean. It's just like getting that, it's like a sneak attack. It's a snipe attack, basically. This was used to basically to like get past British blockades. German U-boats were very good at this. They were even responsible for sinking the Lusitania. Eventually, the Allies kind of basically have an answer to this. They create the destroyers, which basically they destroy the U-boats. So if you think about it, the U-boats destroy the dreadnoughts, the destroyers destroy the U-boats, and I guess if you think about it, the dreadnoughts destroy the destroyers. So basically, it's like it's a cute little circle right there. Next, all right, we have gas. All right, no, not that type of gas. All right, like poison gas. All right. So first of all, tear gas was invented in 1912 by the French, and then the Germans were like, oh, all right, we'll make our own gas, sneezing gas. As you can tell, this is kind of hilarious, just seeing all your enemy just sneezing a bunch. And then the Germans took it to another level, basically, and just put poison in it. So they made chlorine gas in 1915, and in 1917 they made mustard gas. Basically, by inhaling this, your lungs just basically explode. They just die. And you die in an instant. And you die a slow, agonizing death. If you ever read Wilfred Owen's Dulce et Decorum Est, yeah, he goes into great length describing one of his fellow comrades dying via chlorine gas. Man, did you know that he died like 2 days before World War I ended? It's kind of sad, actually. But anyway, next thing on my list, the Willie Nicky telegram. So before World War I ever broke out, like before war was declared, everyone was trying to avoid it. Even Otto von Bismarck, the guy who united all of Germany, he warned Kaiser Wilhelm II, okay, in 20 years, some damned event is going to happen in the Balkans, and Europe is going to be fledged into an entire war. So do whatever you can to stop the next war. So eventually, one of the methods used is the Tsar of Russia, Nicholas II. I'm okay about him. He kind of was an anti-Semite, so whatever. But he was talking to his cousin Wilhelm, so Willie Nicky, and they're like saying, please don't join the war, or please, see our side of the story. And unfortunately, they're kind of too stubborn to see the other side, so war happens. But it's a cute set of letters, to be honest. Okay, this is where we're getting to page territory. This is like page territory. It's the center of it. Total War. All right, Total War. So basically, Total War. I learned this the hard way because I wrote this on a test, and he's like, no, Jeremy, this is not what Total War is. Total War is basically all citizens are involved in the war effort. If you're not talking about war, what's wrong with you? Basically, that's Total War. So in Britain, 1916, there was conscription. 1917 for Canada, but we'll get to that later. And the benefit of this war, honestly, actually, is labor unions were not picked on, basically, because all these labor unions are working for the war effort. So if they're unhappy, you're going to want to do whatever you can to make them happy again, so they continue working to basically produce arms, weapons, whatever, uniforms, boots, all these awesome things for the army. So basically, anything that the labor unions wanted, they basically got, which is kind of sweet. In Germany, if you were of the age of 18 to 60, you had to have a military job according to the auxiliary service law. I'll repeat that again. Auxiliary service law. France, you had food shortages, and the army basically mutinied. So that was not good. Italians, Cowards were shot in battle, and also the army also mutinied. That's not really relevant to Total War, but I wanted to put that just before I forget. Okay, technology. We're going to technology now. Planes. So first of all, planes were kind of first used in the Battle of the Marne. It was really they didn't have guns, didn't have anything. It was just to spot any breaks in the army. Breaks. So like okay. If I have an army right here, alright, I'm going to stand up for this one. So I have an army, alright? They're coming this way. Alright? Now, that's great and all. But what if they're moving this way? Well, this is better because chances are there's probably going to be a break somewhere here. Alright? There might be like a couple soldiers that are left behind, or not even a couple soldiers, like they just have a great distance. This can be exploited. Basically, I can have an army come here. The planes will tell you, all right, this area is being, it's an opening. So my army can go in, harass them here and here, and now that can eventually I can surround them, and it'll just be a bloodbath for them. Their army is destroyed. So that's what planes were used initially. Then, the Germans invented Zeppelins and blimps, which basically bombed the armies. But I mean, they're kind of slow, to be honest, and also I mean it's a balloon. It's a balloon, so you just like one shot at it. That's it. Like you're done. No more Zeppelin. So it's kind of funny, but I mean also quite serious. Then you start adding guns to these planes, and you get dogfights. No, not illegal dogfights that you see a bunch of places, or the types that you see in Beverly Hills, Chihuahua. No, I'm talking about plane dogfights. So basically just, one plane versus another plane trying to shoot each other down. One shoots one another down, hits the ground, you dead. Alright, then the next guy, then you go and try and get the next plane. And the Germans were the ones who invented basically the gun from the propeller. And then everyone else copied that. Okay, now we're going to talk about some important pilots. So, if you love comic books, then you should know that the best comic book series ever are the Peanuts, and therefore you just love Snoopy when he tries to go on in his little doghouse and try and shoot down the Red Baron. The Red Baron was the German. He was the leader of the German Air Force, and he was notorious for just being a nuisance, and just being really annoying and just destroying destroying the Air Force. The United States had one good pilot. His name was Eddie Rickbacker. Sorry, Rickbacker. It sounds just as you spell it. He doesn't do much. The Canadians have their own pilot, Roy Brown. He is the one who's credited for shooting down the Red Baron, and that's pretty remarkable since Canada at the time had a pretty small Air Force. Robert Borden didn't like the Air Force at all. He thought it was a nuisance. It wasn't a good idea. It was just a waste of time. Next thing, tanks. In 1916, the British were the first ones to release tanks. Basically, they were called tanks because the British claimed that these giant boxes did not have any mechanized armored cars at all. It had water tanks. Exactly, water tanks. Yes, definitely water tanks. Nothing to see here. And these were good. These were pretty effective. However, sometimes they could get stuck in the mud, or they could just simply break down. So I mean, that would honestly suck. Like you're just driving your tank, and then all of a sudden, and it breaks down. That would kind of suck because you just have to get off on your own and try and see what's the problem, or you might have to ditch it, honestly. Okay, machine guns. Usually they were 4 or 5 men. It would just be you, like right here, just trying to shoot them, and have one guy like passing the bullets, and just it would honestly. Before guns, you have to aim. You just can't shoot that. If your enemy's there, you're not gonna shoot that way. It's gonna kill him. But with machine guns, you really didn't have to aim. Honestly, it's the easiest gun to use. You pull the trigger and you just shoot them down. That's it. It's that simple. All right, some people you might want to know. So Kaiser Wilhelm II was the leader of Germany. By the way, if Kaiser sounds familiar, it should be because Kaiser is the German word for Caesar. So basically king. He was good friends with Franz Ferdinand, and so basically when Franz Ferdinand was assassinated, he did not take that too well. Basically, the Black Hand was a Serbian terrorist organization who had ties to the government. So you don't. So that's kind of interesting because usually terrorists are against the government, but they were responsible for the murder of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Franz Joseph was the emperor. He didn't really like Archduke Franz Ferdinand, honestly. But of course, he has to do something about his death, so he doesn't like Serbia anymore. Raymond Poincaré, he was the president of France at the time, and David Lloyd George. There we go. He is a British politician who eventually became the Secretary of War in 1916. Okay, that's halfway of World War One. All right, I'm just gonna drink stuff. Okay, all right. Let's keep going. All right, Canada. So basically, Canada at the time was part of Great Britain. It was a colony. Although, I mean, it was basically like, it had its own rights, it had its own identity. That's fine and all dandy. But as soon as Britain goes to war, basically Canada has to go to war. So, basically, this was initially a volunteer army, because Canada did not feel, it was not necessarily willing to, like, send troops to a country basically an entire ocean away to fight on some territory that they don't even care about. So they didn't like that. So they said they made a volunteer army. Eventually, they kind of needed more men. Not too many people decided to volunteer. So basically, in 1917, they released the Military Service Act, which didn't force people to join, but said like if you join, if you conscript yourself, then you are allowed to vote. So naturally, since everyone wants to vote, since we're in that day and age that everyone has to vote. Basically, a lot of people decided to join. Their navy, they only had 2 ships. Honestly, they did not build their navy or their air force for that matter. They often had defective equipment, like their boots wouldn't do too well in the mud. Then the best ever, they had the Ross rifle, which was literally the worst thing they ever did because it was a really special. It was basically a special rifle that had specialized bullets, which ordinarily wouldn't be bad, but because you're fighting in a war and you kind of need as many bullets as you can, usually a lot of people you would use all your bullets and just just grab a corpse and grab their bullets. So I mean, if you're using your gun and you're one of your own bullets, well now you don't have any other bullets because basically the enemy doesn't even use the same bullets. So it doesn't make any sense. Okay, and then Canada also had like minority issues basically. So blacks were excluded from the army, except one group of blacks formed the Nova Scotia units. Aboriginals were also excluded; they weren't allowed to fight. Whites said that if the Aboriginals wanted to join, but the whites were like, no, you're not joining. See, let me put it to you this way: if you join, you're gonna get captured, and if you're captured, the Germans are going to kill you because you're a savage. I mean, come on, you're a savage. Why would anyone want to spare anyone like you? That's racist, but unfortunately they did that. So, also French Canadians were discriminated against because no one liked Quebec at the time. Quebec was a nuisance, honestly. They were kind of independent. They had their own identity, but they're still part of Canada, so they had no choice in the matter. Women. So women, they served as nurses, and many more served in civil service. So they basically were secretaries. They did not get paid as much as men, so that's discrimination. That's not good. But there's still a few prominent women, like for example, Margaret MacDonald, who was given the title of Major. So I mean, that's an army term, and she got it. So good for her. Basically, women they just on they in short they didn't I mean they played a crucial role, but they weren't treated well. Honestly, they weren't treated well. Okay, like America, they had victory bonds. So it was basically if you buy bonds, the Canadians have more. The Canadian government has more money to spend for the spent on the war. If you don't know what a bond is, which I wouldn't be surprised because bonds are, I mean, no one really cares about them anymore. At least for me, my dad probably does, but whatever. Bonds is basically you give the government money, and the government's like, all right, sweet, thanks. All right, we'll take that back, and we won't give that money back to you or we'll give it back to you in a few years. So a few years go by, hopefully until the end of the war, and the government gives you that money back plus interest, so you get more money. So this is why the government wanted to issue bonds, because they needed money now. Of course, they pay the people back later, but they needed money now. That's why bonds were so important. Now, enemies at home, Canada is just notorious for treating everyone horribly. So in the wars, so I said I was going to talk about this. So the War Measures Act is suppressed the rights of those considered to be enemy aliens. So basically, if you're that comes later. If you were German, if you were Austro-Hungarian, if you're Polish, Ukrainian, if you're Czech, if you're Slovakian, basically you were discriminated against, you had no rights. Germans were often called Huns because they were considered to be barbaric like the Huns. Mennonites of all people were also discriminated because they were pacifists. They were like, I don't want to be in the war. I'm good. I don't want to be involved in this no more. So you kind of have to respect that a little bit. Okay, what else? All right, now we're going to the U.S. All right, we're kind of how much? Okay. We're almost done with World War I. Alright, so U.S. So reasons to join. So first of all, there are a bunch of British Americans. So a lot of people wanted to join World War I to fight for their fellow British comrades. Also, both the English and both the British and the United States spoke English. They were both Christian. They had all these ideas. And also, they wanted to help the French because the French helped them in the American Revolution. It's kind of like repaying themselves, paying a debt. America didn't really like Germany because Germany invaded Belgium, and Belgium was neutral, right? Belgium didn't do anything, so I mean, America was just like, hey, dude, that's not nice, that's not good. And some people want to really maintain American neutrality. For example, William Jennings Bryan. He was Secretary of State, attempted to become president, didn't work, but he firmly believed in neutrality. Eventually, he'd go on to be the prosecutor for the traditional side in the Scopes Monkey trial. He would win the case, but lose the theology argument, and he would die in his sleep. I know this because I had to do a project on the Scopes Monkey trial. But anyway, eventually the United States begins to start supplying materials to the Allies. Germany started torpedoing American ships. So the United States didn't really like that too much. So the Germans are like, okay, our bad, we don't want to shoot down Americans, you guys aren't even in the war yet, we don't want to start problems, so we'll make you a deal, we'll create the Sussex Pledge, which basically means if you have an American flag on there, alright, then we won't shoot down your ship, alright? That's fair enough, alright? We Gucci. Now, the British hear this and they're like, okay, so basically, if we have an American flag on our ship, then they won't shoot us. So let's put a bunch of American flags on our ship. So basically, they start using this. So eventually, the Germans get tired of this and sort of resume their normal ways in small scales. They don't like start like shooting down every single ship. They just they don't trust the British or the Americans now. The United States actually starts conscripting via this Conscription Act. It's also called the Selective Service Act. Okay, so then in the home front, so you have dollar-a-year men, which are rich entrepreneurs who technically get $1 per year, but they basically they manage the American industry. You also issue daylight savings. Railroads and telegrams are controlled by the government. Labor demands are met. I explained this before because you want to keep the workers happy, so they continue making stuff for the continue making stuff for the war effort. The Food Administration was issued by Hoover. He said he wanted to implement sort of charities so you can send food to Belgium, because basically Germany, when they went to Belgium, they committed atrocities there. So that you want to do anything you can to help the Belgians. He also issued Meatless Monday and Wheatless Wednesday and all that fun stuff. And then he eventually kind of dropped the ball for the 1929 stock market crash. Sucks, but whatever. Liberty bonds, same thing as victory bonds. This is also where we start seeing Uncle Sam, where the guy who basically says, "I want you to buy Liberty bonds," or "I want you to join the army." So basically, that's what's happening. You also have something called the Creel Committee, or the CPI. They're responsible for the investigation of those who are not necessarily for the war. Really, this is like World War I for America is like the time of snitches. Like, you're supposed to be you're not supposed to trust anyone. You're supposed to scout on those who you think might have ties with the enemy or might not be supportive of the war. And that's not good because it's kind of mean. But basically, this is what the Creel Committee did. It dealt with people who were not who didn't get the vibe, who didn't want to who didn't like the war. Maybe they were Germans and they didn't feel like this war was ethical or whatever. But no matter what, they didn't like that, so they often picked on you. 4-Minute Men. They were people who went to movies, and after the movie, they would have 4 minutes of just talking about it, about what's going on, the politics, what's happening with the Germans and the Americans and the Italians and the Ottomans and all those other people. And it was really just to build sentiment against the Germans. Then you also have the Espionage Act of 1917, which it issued penalties for anyone showing disloyalty to for the war. You also had the Sedition Act of 1918. Sedition just basically means restriction of freedom of speech. So basically, you could not say anything that was opposed to the war. This was tested when Eugene V. Debs openly opposed the war. He was arrested and he was tried. Then you also had the Trading with the Enemies Act, which basically, if you wanted a foreign newspaper, you had to get it translated, and if it meant the approval of the United States, which basically meant if it didn't say anything bad about the United States, or it didn't say anything good about the Germans, then it was okay to be passed on to the United States, and the American people could read it. Okay, I already talked about the Camp Logan riots, I already talked about East St. Louis riots. W.E.B. Du Bois would write about the East St. Louis riots. Yep, basically that's it. Alright, that I think is that it? Okay guys, that's World War I. That took us, okay, that's 50 minutes. That's not good. Let's see what we can do. Okay, we're gonna continue. Okay, World War II. So I have a timeline now. So 1936, Hitler takes over the Rhineland. 1937, Hitler invades Austria. 1938 is the rape of Nanking. The Japanese take over Nanking and just do horrible atrocities, from killing all the males and basically raping and enslaving all the women. September 29th is the Munich Conference between Chamberlain of Great Britain, Dolier of France, Mussolini of Italy, and Hitler of Germany. In 1939, Hitler invades Czechoslovakia in March. April, Italy invades Albania. April 22nd, the Soviet Nazi non-aggression pact is created, which is basically Germany is basically gonna like. It's like, okay, like we'll make a line down here. I'll take this side of Poland. You can take that side of Poland, and we could just be chummies. All right. This is Hitler's attempt to also avoid a two-front war. See, Hitler was part of the he was part of the German military in World War I, and so he knew about the Schlieffen Plan, and he knew the purpose of it. And so when he became, when he started ruling Germany, he knew that he had to do something about this because he didn't want to make. He didn't want to have a two-front war. Again, two-front wars suck. I know. Like, my older brother Danny and Matthew. Okay, I'm not lying. Just the other day, my two brothers were like, they were having a Nerf war against me. I had to hide in my parents' room and just like get ready to like go all like ballistic on them. It was just crazy. So yeah, I know how that feels. But anyway, so that's what happens. On May 22nd. Still 1939, Hitler basically makes the Pact of Steel with Italy. So now Hitler is friends with Italy and the Soviet Union. Remember, this is the Soviet Union now. This is no longer just like Russia. Oh boy. Alright, let's keep going. Alright. We're gonna keep going. We're gonna blitzkrieg through this. Alright. Okay, this is the most important date ever. September 1st, 1939. Hitler invades Poland. September 3rd, Great Britain and France declare war on Germany. September 29th, Warsaw falls. Warsaw is the capital of Poland, if you didn't know. And it's the beginning of the Phony War. The Phony War is the first 7 months of the war where basically no one did anything. Like, they were so, like, the French were so scared of, like, doing anything about it. They're like, oh, they're just lovely chaps, the Germans, we're not going to attack them. Dude, you have to attack the Germans, alright? Come on, snap out of it. They're the enemy, you shoot them, you get them before they get you. That's the way things work, alright? Honestly, it was so stupid. Okay, 1940, May 10th, the British they try to take Norway because Germany wants to take Norway for all the materials and all the supplies. And then Britain's like, no, not today. But actually it is today, and they lost. After this, Neville Chamberlain, he resigns. Remember, Neville Chamberlain was the one who wanted appeasement. He thought he could reason with Hitler. No, you don't reason with Hitler. That's the mistake everyone made, honestly. They were all like, oh, we can just like manipulate Hitler, or we can, we can kind of change his opinion. No. Hitler, you do not mess with. You do not try and control him. He controls you, honestly. So basically, U.S. in May 1940, U.S. moves the Pacific Fleet to Pearl Harbor, but they're still not in the war. They just want to move their troops to the Pacific. All right. June 4th is the Battle of Dunkirk. So this is when the Germans start doing their offensive. Okay. So here's Belgium. Here's the Ardennes Forest, and this is the Maginot Line. So they basically go through here, and trap the British forces surrounding them here at Dunkirk, and basically the French army is screwed, but the British army eventually gets saved by a bunch of civilians who make the dangerous trek across the English Channel, and a bunch of the soldiers make it back to Britain. Recently there was a movie, it's actually called Dunkirk. Okay, June 10th. The French officials basically leave Paris. There's no hope for Paris. There's no hope for France. Germany takes over France. In fact, Hitler makes the French surrender in the same train car where the Germans had to humiliatingly sign the Treaty of Versailles. So Hitler found that very ironic. September 7th, the Blitz starts. So the Blitz is what the British call, that's the same thing as the Battle of Britain. It's basically the German offensive on Britain, basically just dropping bombs on industrial centers and eventually dropping bombs on civilian cities in London, especially. September 22nd, the tripartite pipe. I can't speak today. The tripartite pact is signed, creating the Axis powers.
And the Axis powers is really just a group of three nations: Germany, Italy, and Japan. 1941. So June, Japan invades Indochina. Now, Indochina, if you don't know, that's Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Eventually, this becomes more relevant in the Vietnam War. We're going to talk about that next year with Miss Everett, so it's going to be great and fun and dandy, and we'll have to get back to this. Okay, June 22nd, Germany invades the USSR. Ha! Et tu, Brute? Yep, I stabbed you in the back, alright? So basically, Russia is unprepared for this. They are being mowed down by the Germans, and they have to, they're so desperate that they have to get their own specialized elite soldiers who literally go on ice skates and basically shoot everyone down. And that kind of is that's a temporary resolve for the situation. Actually, British, American, and even Russian spies were saying, dude, the Germans are coming, arm your soldiers, get ready. But Stalin didn't want to seem aggressive to Hitler because he still thought Hitler and Stalin, Stalin still thought Hitler was going to be friends with him. Although others do say that Stalin kind of saw this one coming. But either way, Stalin's like, I'm not listening, I'm not going to listen to you guys. And eventually he's like, oh shoot, yeah, they were right, dang, that sucks. He didn't want to arm the soldiers because he didn't want, if you start arming your soldiers, he thought that Hitler would see it, get upset, and then attack earlier. Which, I don't get his reasoning, but whatever. Stalin's kind of crazy after all. People say he killed his own wife, which I can believe. Okay. The second most important date in World War II. December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor is bombed by the Japanese Air Force. I swear to God, my brother did not know this. I asked him today, like, Danny, do you know when Pearl Harbor was? And he's just like, 1939? And I'm like, boy, come on, you need to know this. You're an American. Come on, get this right. So anyway, that happens. December 8th, the U.S. declares war on Japan. Just side note, I get annoyed at this because my birthday is December 9th, and every single important event happens. You have December 7th, December 8th, December 10th, December 11th, but never December 9th. Never December 9th. Like, no one cares about December 9th, except for me. Anyway. December 11th, so basically, okay, December, it should be December 10th, sorry, December 8th, the U.S. declares war on Japan, and December 11th, Germany declares war on the United States, because Germany and Japan are best friends, and if you declare war on one of us, you declare war on all three of us. So basically, that's kind of how it worked. May 5th, 1942 was the Battle at Coral Sea. That was we don't need to know that, just don't forget it, whatever. June 4th, Battle of Midway. This basically, so the Japanese were coming for the United States. Alright, they already bombed Pearl Harbor. So basically, if the Japanese take Midway, Pearl Harbor is so close that you might as well just abandon Pearl Harbor because it's going to be so susceptible to being bombed. So eventually, the Americans win the Battle of Midway, and that cripples the Japanese Air Force. So the Japanese will never go towards the United States ever again. So that's an important battle. Okay, what else happened? Give me a second. Okay, I'm doing good with water. Jeez, alright. We can do it. Alright. Okay. 1943, February 2nd, the Russians win the Battle of Stalingrad. Now, okay, Stalingrad has no strategic importance, it has no weaponry importance, no supply importance, nothing. The only reason why Hitler thought it would be a good idea of attacking it is because it has the word Stalin in it. It's like a slap in the face to Stalin. Unfortunately, Stalin actually put up a pretty good fight. This Russians win. Hitler's pretty embarrassed. By the way, I forgot to say that the invasion on the USSR was delayed because Germany had to deal with the Yugoslavs for a few months, which in the end kind of ruined their plan because eventually winter set in. It was the coldest winter ever, and so that basically pushed the Germans back. July 1943, the Battle of Kursk ends the German invasion of the USSR. So now, the USSR is now going this way. Germany is running back to Germany. All the Germans are running back to Germany at this point. All right. June 6th, well, actually, no, not yet. Here, there's still some okay, they're going this way. June 6, 1944, D-Day, the third important date that you need to know. This is also known as Operation Overlord, not Overload, just making sure, it's Overlord. And this is, I don't want to get into the specifics, but basically, basically, everyone thought they were going to land at this other place called Calais, but they actually landed at Normandy. They won eventually, even though it was very costly, and they pushed back the Germans. Okay, and then December 1944 was the Battle of the Bulge, which is considered to be Germany's last stand. It's also the same battle where Germany was just like, you better leave and surrender, or we will annihilate you. You have 1 hour to respond, and the United States responds with one word: nuts. So it's actually kind of funny. Is that where the meme comes from? You know, that would be interesting. Like that would be an interesting historical background. But anyway, 1945, April, Hitler kills himself. I don't know how else to put that. April 12th, Harry S. Truman becomes president because Franklin Delano Roosevelt was cheating on his wife somewhere else, and he kind of had a stroke and he died. May 8th is VE Day. That VE Day means victory in Europe, which basically means Europe is no longer an issue. The Allies win in Europe. And then you have Japan. So now Japan's an issue because they're going to fight to the bitter end. Even after island hopping, the battle's just going to get more ferocious. The Japanese even train their own women to just have like the simplest in military education. So that way, if the Americans come, you at least have the women. So eventually, August 6th, Harry S. Truman allows Little Boy to be dropped on Hiroshima, and eventually the Japanese do not surrender. So on August 9th, Fat Man is dropped on Nagasaki. And then September 2nd is VJ Day, which means victory in Japan, which basically means the Japanese give up. Okay, some things that you have to know. The good neighbor policy. So back when World War II was just starting, it was a huge deal about oppressing other people or putting your military into other countries. So the United States is like, yeah, we don't approve of that. And then they realized that they did that to a bunch of Latin American states. And in a bunch of Caribbean states. So they start pulling out their troops from Dominican Republic, from Haiti, from the Philippines. And this goes so well that they decide, when the United States goes to war, they decide to help the Allied powers. They decide to help the United States in their endeavors in defeating Japan and Europe. The Nye Committee, that's important because they wanted to figure out why World War I started, to see like what were the hidden reasons for it. Then also the United States was neutral in the Spanish Civil War, but you didn't even know that. The United States issued neutrality acts to try and keep, to make sure, to really give the impression that they're being neutral, even though they're not. So when they shipped supplies, they actually shipped it to a private company who then shipped it personally to the British. Honestly, if the British never had the American supplies, Germany would destroy Britain, and then America would be in trouble, and the future would be completely different. Eventually, the United States issues Lend-Lease, which basically means anything that you want, Britain, just ask us, and we'll buy it for you. It's kind of like the best parent ever. It's just like or your best friend at the bistro who's like, all right, whatever you want, I'll buy at the bistro and I'll pay you. You can pay me back later, but I'll buy whatever you want. So that's pretty sweet.
Island hopping, I talked about this earlier. This is basically the Japanese, it was the American way of attacking the Japanese, which is basically going from island to island, attacking each and conquering each island, and just slowly making your way toward the mainland. This was successful to an extent, but also the ferocity of the Japanese army increased. So it's kind of like a video game where each successive level just got repeatedly harder. That's really it. So now we're getting to page territory. How much? Okay, really 3¼ pages. All right, so let's see. So I'm gonna talk about basically technology. So in the U.S., most weaponry, they produce the most weapons than all the other countries. A man named Kaiser, he basically changed the format of building ships. So it only took before it took almost an entire year to build one transport ship, but he changed the system so it only took 80 days to build one transport ship. The U.S. had radar and sonar. The difference is radar was used in the air, used to track planes. Sonar is used to track ships. Also, the United States invented the Jeep at this time. Germany. Alright, Germany was famous for its light and fast tanks. The Panzer and Tiger units. This played very well into their plan of Blitzkrieg, which basically, to be honest, this would have worked well in the Schlieffen plan as well. Just attack the left, quickly attack it, and then attack the right. Really quick, fast tanks, sometimes malfunction, but other than that, very effective, very quick. They invented rotating machine guns. They also used radios. And they also invented V1 and V2 bombs. It was considered the first. The V2 bomb was considered the first guided bomb, which is basically like a homing missile a little bit. Russia, the only major technological advancement they did is they created the T-34 tank, so that was pretty good. Next, I'm going to talk about mobilization. So in Great Britain, well, not mobilization. I'm going to talk what's more like the home front actually. Great Britain. So you have rationing, eggs, sugar, bacon. That's all rationed. Grow your own food was huge. The women's land army was very popular. They were called land girls, which is basically this huge thing of making your own food. The government essentially controlled the economy. Tank and airplane production tripled, and you also you even had a ministry for fuel. It was frowned upon back then to drive. A lot of people enjoy driving. Once you're done with work, just drive around the neighborhood in your car. People in World War II, that was frowned upon because oil was very necessary. So if you're just wasting that oil, you are basically just helping the enemy. That's what they said. They say if you like to drive on your own, you're basically you're basically giving Hitler a ride, so to speak. Also, the British had this sort of saying, dig for victory, so they were big on the agricultural aspect of it. The USSR, they had total war basically. They had the worst deal of them all, because the Germans had issued the worst atrocities in the Soviet Union. This is the only country to have women fighters, women fighters, not women nurses, not women secretaries, not women anything else, women fighters. All right. They also had women pilots, and they were the Germans called them the night witches, which, if you have a hard time remembering that, just think of a Halloween witch who rides on her broom. You also had snipers. They acted as snipers.
1/5 of the entire Russian population died. Alright? That's like almost as bad as the Black Plague, or as the Black Death, the bubonic plague. So that pretty much sucked. Factories were moved towards the central area because, one, it was more industrial there, and two, Germany was invading from the west. So in order to prevent them from getting new supplies, the Russians moved their industrial centers back towards the center. I'm so glad I brought this water bottle. Okay, next. 55% of their income went to the war effort, and also, a lot of people weren't fighting for communism; they were fighting for Mother Russia, which Stalin used to his advantage because he eventually endorsed this idea. Now, as much as that is great, Stalin wasn't good because he reduced the civilian food consumption by 40%. That's like a big deal. Like, that's like the difference of having a loaf of bread for like an entire day to like one slice of bread for an entire day. Like, that's a huge difference. It's not good. The U.S., basically, you had to have universal support for the war. The War Powers Act was issued. It basically increased federal power in the war. You had the Office of Price Administration, which controlled inflation and rationing. You also had propaganda, so you had movies, posters, you had all these celebrities. So you had all this to make you really just believe this idea that you need to do everything to help in the war. You also had the Office of War Information. Automobiles were stopped being produced from 1942 to 1944. There was rationing, so no sugar, no butter, no gas, no nylon stockings, you had meatless Monday, and you couldn't hunt or fish. All these supplies had to be given, instead of for you, they had to be given to the military. Women served in the armed services. They helped. Some of them were mechanics, some of them were secretaries, some of them were nurses. And just like World War I and basically every other country, women made less. African Americans also suffer from discrimination. You had the VV program, which was like victory in Europe and victory against segregation. A. Philip Randolph was an activist, a black activist who wanted to actually, he wanted to march on Washington because he was just so upset about how, like, we're fighting for democracy, but we still have racism in America. There were race riots in Harlem. You also had the famous 1943 Detroit riot. For Hispanics, they were not segregated. They were Texan Mexicans were considered white, but nevertheless they were still mistreated and disrespected. You also had the Bracero program, which is basically will allow Mexican farmers to come into the United States to farm and give us a portion of their profits, so we can use that for the war effort. You also had Zoot Suit riots. Native Americans, they still lived on reservations. They were also used as Navajo talkers. And unfortunately, according to legend, there would have to be a man with a gun to the head of the Navajo talker, so that in case they were being invaded or being attacked, they had to shoot the Navajo in the head, so that their secret and their language wouldn't get out, basically. Japanese internment. So you had Executive Order 9066, which basically put the Japanese into labor camps. They lost their homes, they lost their businesses, they lost their bank accounts. This was a huge mistreatment. There was really no good reason to do it. I'm so tired. Okay, and wait, is it finally? I'm not sure. Okay, so FDR had his famous 4 freedoms. Freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, which basically means you won't have to like starve and you won't have to like want food because you'll have so much food basically, and freedom from fear. And he's also Mr. Page added that he had a 5th freedom, which was to sell the war. And how are you going to sell the war? Through Liberty bonds and victory bonds and all that fun and dandy stuff. All right, in Germany, so Hitler, he remembered in World War One that the Germans had rationing. Rationing, he remembered that this sucked. It would everyone was starving. No, like they were killing each other basically. So in order to maintain civilian morale, he refused to issue rationing, which he didn't do until 1944. But by that time it was kind of too late. His own minister Albert Speer actually wanted to implement full militarization and using all supplies for the military, which meant that that Hitler would have to start rationing, and Hitler didn't want to do that until it was too late, basically in 1944. Women initially didn't work. Why? Because Hitler, through his Aryan ways, believed that it was the women's duty to be at home at all times to make the babies, which was, I don't know what to say about that. It's just kind of, it's just borderline stupid and just idiotic. There's a difference. Okay, then there were clothing drives. Women operated as radio operators. The middle class actually refused to work. They were so stuck up. No, they didn't want to work. They refused to work. Many prominent German cities were bombed. Berlin was bombed at one point. Dresden was bombed, except for the part where Kurt Vonnegut was staying, and then he had to clean up all the dead corpses. Women and children moved to the rural areas, and also schools, theaters, and cafes were closed. Alright, we're almost there. We're getting into the home stretch. Japan. So Japan had a mobilized society. The government controlled prices, they controlled wages, they controlled materials. But most importantly of all, the Japanese believed in the Bushido Code, which is basically a code that says you sacrifice everything for your country, including your life. This justified the kamikaze pilots. And also, if you messed up, if you didn't do it, if you decided to surrender, you should commit seppuku, which is Japanese suicide. It's like it's like cutting yourself here, cutting yourself in the stomach, and then just dying. Now we're gonna talk about the Canadians. This is the last part. So Canada wanted to initially stay out of the war. But it decided to slowly sort of be more involved. They had Defense Force. They allowed RAF pilots to be trained there. They were still under the impression initially that Hitler could be reasoned with. Like I said before, you don't reason with Hitler. This time, Aboriginals were enlisted into the army. So that's the difference. Women were still recruited. And like every other country, they got less pay. You had Jill Canucks, who were just like us. They were nurses, and they worked in the medical field. Women also worked as truck drivers. They worked in munitions, and there were also Bren gun girls. Also, while women went to school, you had government daycare. That's sweet. And finally, the Wars Measures Act. It allowed atrocities. So this is a different. Well, it's the same Wars Measure Act. As I said before. 22,000 Japanese Canadians were interned after December 8th, 1941. That's a day after Pearl Harbor, so they're already just getting on their. They're really nervous. If you weren't interned, you could be deported back to Japan. All of them lost businesses and they lost their cars, and their civil liberties were not returned until 1949. And with that, that concludes my entire spiel. So I've counted this, and this is basically a bit over an hour. But thank you so much for watching this. I don't know how helpful this was. I mean, I spent all day today just like making this giant script. But what I suggest is you really just take time just to pause and really take notes. If you want, just send me an email. I'll send you my script. I will email you my script because this has good stuff on it, in my opinion. If same thing goes for the Mexican Revolution, if you want me to send you that script, I will. So I love doing this. I hope this helps, guys. I really just hope for the best, and thanks so much. All right.